Hello Summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we'll be talking about everything that you must know about Season 11. For those of you guys who haven't been playing around in the preseason, this should help you bridge the gap between Season 10 and 11 so you're up to speed and ready for ranked. This video is kind of for people like my friend Anna who kind of just gave up because of the new items being too complicated. Every year, we see some pretty big changes that go into the preseason as Riot tries to spice things up for the next season's start, and this one is no exception. In fact, we've seen some of the biggest changes ever, including an overhaul of a system that's over 10 years old. That system is of course the item shop. Everything from the items themselves to the interface has been revamped for a more modern feel. Around 1/3 of all items were completely removed and replaced with new items. 1/3 were reworked or touched up, and 1/3 were just kind of kept the same, with maybe some minor stat adjustments. A lot of the item removals and reworks were aimed at getting rid of the redundancy of unwanted item effects, with the replacements filling in new niches. This means there are many more build paths than before, with different items shining specifically in certain situations, but not necessarily at the expense of a huge amount of your damage. Take ADCs for example. Previously, if they needed QSS or Grievous wounds, it meant giving up a crit item slot, which would significantly hinder your DPS. Now, both QSS and Executioner's Calling build into a legendary item with crit on it. These items may not add quite as much damage as a fully offensive item like, say, Infinity Edge, but the damage trade-off is negligible compared to the OP active and passive that you can pick up, and you'll still be able to hit that 100% crit chance by the time you're full build. Grievous wounds is now more easily accessible to every single champion, and is stronger than before. All items apply Grievous wounds at a regular rate of 40%, but that can be increased to 60% under the right conditions. For example, with old Thornmail on a tank, if the enemy never auto-attacked you, you had no way of applying Grievous wounds to them. Against 80 champions in a 1v1, this is fine since they were forced to auto-attack and deal damage. But then teamfight where you can just attack other targets, or champions like Vladimir, Fiddle, or Swain, they could just rely on their spell damage, and you have no way to apply the healing debuff. Now, with the new Thornmail, you can apply the buffed up healing reduction by immobilizing your target. Another big change was the removal of cooldown reduction, which was replaced by ability haste. The new stats still serve the purpose of lowering your abilities' cooldowns, but now scale linearly, similar to armor and magic resist. This means that they literally have no cap, like the armor and magic resist, and you can easily stack enough items with ability haste to lower your cooldowns by over 50%. I mean, builds like that aren't necessarily optimal on most champions, but Ezreal is one of them. Anyway, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So those are the changes to existing mechanics in the shop, but what's brand new? Well, the most important addition to the item shop is easily the new mythic tier of items. These items are more than just part of your core. They serve as the cornerstone of your entire build and can help suit your gameplay needs for any given game. Like legendary items, these items come with very strong passives and actives, but what sets them apart is their mythic passive. Mythic passives grant you stats on every other legendary item that you complete, causing your mythic to scale up as the game goes on. This also works well with ARAM because you could get one of those starting items that counts as a legend. I mean, if you guys are ARAM gamers, I don't know. Let's look at an example of how these items give your champion the ability to pivot to different games' needs. Let's do some compare and contrast. For the sake of this, we'll use two AD Assassin mythics with Prowler's Claw and Eclipse. Prowler's Claw has 3 more lethality, 5 more attack damage, and gets 10 more ability haste, versus Eclipse's 10% Omnivap. So stat-wise, there's not too much of a damage difference yet. But when you look at the rest of the items, you can see how one is designed with a completely different playstyle in mind. Prowler's Claw's active gives a gap closer that deals damage and gives you increased damage to that target for the next few seconds, while the mythic passive gives you flat lethality to the other completed items. Eclipse, on the other hand, does damage based on your enemy's max HP while shielding you and giving you movement speed, while the mythic passive grants you percentage-based armor penetration on your other items. So, Prowler's Claw makes assassins even better at sticking to and bursting down squishy targets, while Eclipse gives them a better fighting chance at dueling beefier bruisers and even tanks in extended fights, something they basically never stood a chance at in the previous seasons. This is just one of the comparisons of many. So if you're completely out of the loop and want to find out more on mythic items, be sure to check out our video completely detailed them specifically. Or you can join me on Twitch on Wednesdays where I play League of Legends at twitch.tv/Nathan_ing. Kind of a shameless self-plug there, but you know, if you need help, I'll be there. Or if you want to just play with me, I'm also down for that. As for the non-mythic new items, as I said before, the main focus has been to fill in some missing niches. For example, if you're playing an AD champion up against a heavy shielded team, you may want to invest in a Serpent's Fang. Previously, if you were playing an enchanter but didn't have an auto attack based champion on your team, you felt relegated to Redemption and Mikhail's since Ardent would be a waste of money. Well, now you can pick up Staff of Flowing Water, which functions like Ardent but instead gives AP and movement speed. There are too many new items to list everything here, but if you want to know more, we do have a video covering that as well, as we mentioned earlier. In fact, we have videos covering all the topics in this video. So if you enjoy our content, consider hitting that sub button so you can go ahead and stay up to date on this meta, as well as the big changes that we've seen in the preseason as they happen, to save yourself from having to go back and find out what you've missed. One last big change to the items in the shop is the complete removal of jungle items, with mythic items being pretty much mandatory as a first item on most champions, with a few exceptions here and there. Completed jungle items have been removed. Instead, you now buy a jungle starting item, either an Ember Knife or a Hail Blade, which respectively grant you a red or blue smite after smiting 5 jungle camps. These items grant Omnivamp against monsters, applying a draining effect similar to Hunter's Talisman, and giving you extra experience from jungle camps, and grants bonus mana regeneration in the jungle and river. Once you use your 5 smites and your summoner spell is upgraded, the item is consumed, but now you keep these passives for the rest of the game. This additional item slot opens up a lot of different build paths for junglers, but has been huge for certain champions, namely Hecarim and Ivern, who usually skip the jungle item, at least in the earlier stages of the game. So, items aside, the shop itself has changed too. And I don't just mean the way it looks. The new recommended tab is a massive upgrade over what it used to be. If you're an experienced player, you know how awful the old system was. It's like Riot pulled random items out of the hat and slapped them on different champions' recommended lists. With the new system, it gives 3 main suggested items and tells you what it provides and what it's strong against. For example, against a team consisting of Vladimir, Skarner, Swain, Caitlyn, and Leona, you may get the following 3 options as an ADC. Mortal Reminder, anti-healing, good against Vladimir and Swain. Mercurial Scimitar, anti-CC, good against Skarner and Leona. Infinity Edge, generally good. In addition to these 3 items that take up a majority of the recommended tab, other commonly purchased items can be found below. The items that show up in the recommended tab are suggested based on Riot's API, so they are based on actual data, not the whim of someone throwing out random items like a blindfolded person playing darts. In my opinion, this is huge for newer players trying to learn how to build situationally, as it helps them ease into the game and figure out what the items do. The shop itself can take some time to get used to, but overall it looks much nicer with the previous version, and Riot has added all the quality of life changes the community has asked for. Now let's go ahead and talk about some changes that we've seen in the jungle. We've already talked about how Riot has removed jungle items, but that's just a part of it. One huge change that many higher elo players didn't like was the kiting jungle camps has been nerfed pretty hard. Basically, Omnivamp has been added to the items, but the camps have been given more movement speed, making it healing through the damage, rather than allowing players with better mechanics to avoid it altogether. Many view this as dumbing down the game, making it so that all that really matters is your pathing, and not your individual mechanical skill when clearing each camp. What's your stance on this? Do you think it's better to have one less tedious thing to worry about, or is it better to have mechanical skill be required even during the PvE parts of the game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Kiting aside, resistances have also been normalized in the jungle. While AoE junglers like Karthus and Shyvana will still excel at Raptors over Gromp, which somebody like Kha'Zix prefers, the normalized damage has opened up more creative paths, instead of limiting champions to certain camps simply because they do either physical or magic damage. There have also been small adjustments to individual camps as well. Killing the large and medium golems and leaving the small ones was the most effective way to clear out your jungle while maintaining high tempo last season. But some of the gold and experiences has been shifted to the baby golems now, which means you have to kill all of them to get the full benefit, including the babies. Yikes. Scuttlecrab no longer grants health and mana upon being killed, with that now being a part of Gromp, so you're no longer at a massive disadvantage just because you don't have lane priority. Scuttlecrab is still an important camp to try to secure, but your opponent won't really get the free boost to the resources to allow them to invade afterwards. Speaking of Scuttle, you'll notice that it has a shield instead of bonus resists, and like those resistances, it still loses its buff when immobilized. Also, Gromp no longer does more damage early on into the fight. Both of these changes were aimed at giving more gameplay clarity when clearing jungle. Sure, once you know how the camps work, it's not the hardest thing to understand, but for brand new players, mechanics like those aren't exactly self-explanatory. So, a lot is changing in the jungle, but the role will still largely be the same. You'll be clearing jungle and hopefully controlling the early game by ganking the enemies to pressure their lanes. It's still one of the better ways to climb in solo queue, so if you want to be ready to carry like a pro, be sure to hit up our coaches at ProGuides.com. They'd love to help you get ready for ranked by the time the season starts back up again. But act fast, because Season 11 is just around the corner. And so are the coaches. Before we go on to some systematic changes to ranked, we have to talk about 2 pretty big champion adjustments that we saw this preseason. Viktor had an innate problem with the new item changes, like junglers, being forced into an item, and in this case, it's his Hex Core. His Hex Core would have delayed him into mythic items being mandatory as a first purchase. His Hex Core was being deleted. Now this item is gone, and he now gains hex fragments from killing units, which he can use to augment his abilities, somewhat similar to Gangplank Silver Serpents. It's a pretty simple change at face value, but having extra item slot is huge for a champion that hyperscales like Viktor. It allows him to build more flexibly later on into the game, without having to actually sacrifice damage by missing out on the more offensive item like Rabadon's. But an even bigger change we saw was to Pantheon. Since his rework, Pantheon has only been really strong as a support. While being played on roles other than the intended can be really cool and even encouraged, Riot doesn't want the God of War to be relegated to just that role. So by applying adjustments to pretty much every part of his kit, he's been turned into arguably the strongest laner in the game for both solo lanes. He has a strong lane phase, comes with CC and damage for easy execute ganks, and can still roam to extend his lead elsewhere. And with the new items, he scales incredibly well. Basically, he doesn't have a weak point in the game. The last point that we'll be talking about is the changes to the rank system. One of the most frustrating things that you can possibly run into in League is doing super well in your games just to have them ruined by 1 or 2 people feeding. Sure, everybody has bad games, but when they are straight up intentionally running it, it'll make you feel like you're losing your mind. Thankfully, Riot has really started cracking down on such behaviors, and things as simple as running Smite and then sealing your jungler's camps can really get you a 2-week timeout, or for repeat offenders, a permaban. While this massively helps deter people from griefing games on purpose, no system will be a 100% success rate. Thankfully, Riot has also introduced an LP loss mitigation system. Basically, if somebody AFKs or ends your games, you will lose less LP. This isn't a flat value though, it's based on how many the system thinks that the player's behavior had an effect on your game's outcome. So if you AFK at 17 minutes in when the score is 3-20, you likely won't be saving much. But if somebody rage quits after dying once when your score is 1-3, you can expect a lot of LP to be saved. And one more thing, no more duoing in Master Plus. Many high elo players frown upon duo abusing, thinking it takes away from solo skill expression. Between this and Riot cracking down on inting, the high elo ecosystem will hopefully become a healthier place. And one last thing, they're actually removing series promos, thank God. You probably still have to do promos to get to the next league, but the series promos are gonna be gone. This means you don't have to be stuck at 99 LP and then win the next 3 games. And that about wraps up everything that you must know about Season 11. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Remember to sub so you can go ahead and stay up to date with other content such as this. Oh, and one more thing before you go, feel free to check out our Discord. The link for that is in the description down below. We love to have you as part of our community, and I cannot wait to see you guys back in the next video. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.